Hello, 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 and welcome back to the SCOUTCAST, brought to you by Fantasy Football Scout. We are back for our first pre-season stream. We've got two of these lined up, one next Monday, and then before we know it, the season will be starting again. For all those that don't know me, my name is Andy, FPL Mode, and I'm also joined by my two ever reliable, ever brilliant fantasy football managers as well. Seb, how's it going, Seb?
All right, mate. Not bad, not bad. I like that you said ever reliable. I was just thinking as you're doing the intro, I was thinking, I remember like two and a half months ago saying next season I'll be like chill when we come into these. I'll be prepared, I'll be ready. What was it? About 7:53, I think I text going like, wait, there was one more thing just as I jumped out the shower. So yeah, I'm here, so we'll do it. How are you, my friend?
You literally text us at 10 to 8 going, I'll be 15 minutes, lads.
Yeah, because I
We're
will
like,
start
what?
at 8, mate. So yeah.
Lovely stuff. But no, yeah, not too bad, mate. Obviously enjoying the summer. Summers are very different when you're a parent. Obviously, you all know that. But it's enjoying it quite a lot anyway. And obviously looking forward to getting back into the swing of things. Rich, how are you doing, my man?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. And as we're confessing things, I remember I said I was gonna try, or I was thinking in my head I was gonna try and help more with, putting together data like Seb does. And I definitely didn't, did I?
No.
I just opened
There's a
WhatsApp and there
table
was
in
a
there.
hundred
There's a table from
messages.
you in there.
There is a table. There is a table. It's a rich table. It's lovely. And it's not goalkeepers either. So that should be fun. But
And I
yeah,
didn't
no.
make it.
No, you also said you were going to sort your camera out for me as well.
Oh, have I not?
I mean, you're still zoomed in.
That's true. I was gonna paint the wall grey as well, but
Well, I mean, we are. So, anybody that hasn't listened to this before, we keep up our promises. Every week we'll be here. Before I move any further, thank you so much for everybody that's joined us tonight. We've got over 100 people in the chat already. We are here every Monday, and I've realised, by the way, that means our first Game Week Scoutcast is going to be while the Man United game's going on. Not overly happy about that, but that should be interesting. Seb's like, oh yeah. We are going to be here, like I said, every Monday, and we go through everything that's coming up in the game week, everything that's happened in the game week, trying to make your overall ranks just that little bit better. And speaking about overall ranks, we just ought to really do a little bit of kind of history as to who we are and what we're doing on this, really. Seb, should we start with you? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about how you are as a manager. We'll start good and we'll get worse as we go on.
Well, that sounds like my management style. Um, oh goodness, yeah. Well, this is the bit I messaged you, wasn't I? I was like, oh, I'll prepare something. I have nothing prepared. So yeah, I suppose I prefer like an analytical approach, but I know the whole Grass FC and Analytics FC thing. It's all just different languages for the same thing, right? So yeah, my preference is to maybe look at some numbers, try and draw some graphs out, stuff like that. But do watch plenty of football as well. I'm a Leeds fan, which used to be useful, is not useful anymore. Although when
Oh,
Leeds first got promoted to the Premier League a couple of years ago, and I think that was the first time I was doing this with you and
Joe?
Joe, I
Yeah.
think. I had a really bad season. I was like 130k or something, which I'd like to blame on Leeds getting promoted and me just bottling it. Because rather than like wanting to, I tried to avoid like biasing myself towards my team, but we obviously did well. So I think I biased myself against us. I never owned Dallas. I
Oh,
barely owned Bamford, and yeah, it went badly. But around that, my seasons have gone okay. I think it's three top five Ks in
okay.
four or something like that. Um,
Oh,
so
they've been
yeah.
okay. Yeah, been okay, haven't they?
Oh,
Yeah.
shut up. I mean, it's no FPL Harry, is it? But yeah, no, they're okay. But I mean, there's lots of luck in there, right? Because I think last year I spent most of this scout cast sort of going like, oh, season's not so great,
Yeah.
whatever. And I sort of just snuck up, just along you two as well. Like we were all really similar.
Mhm.
And then there was just a jammy shout at the end, right? That took me a few tens of
Wow.
Ks up.
You had a
So
few.
that's
You
how
had
it
a few.
goes.
Not jammy either. Like you had a few. You went Wilson instead of Isak when we both went Isak, and obviously you went Kane captain at the end as well, didn't you? I mean, they were enough to jump you up quite a few.
Yeah.
Look at him. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I did
and
do
we'd
that.
call him
Yeah,
out for the Saka captaincy as well, but we
yeah.
all did that. Otherwise, that was jammy.
Oh, the one that went yeah. So remember the World Cup break when I think we all had real similar teams,
Yeah.
and I dropped Saka and brought in Foden, and that
Oh
that hurt.
yes.
It took me most of the season to recover from that.
Yeah.
Might have got like a silly rank if I'd not done that, but yeah.
But you, I mean, comfortably some beautiful overall ranks there. From the last four seasons. if you had to say, you've already said kind of analytics is the way you go. If you had to describe yourself as a manager really quickly for anybody that hasn't listened to us before, how would you describe yourself really quickly?
I guess one of the reasons I like analytics is it removes some of the innate human bias in, games like football, things that we're going to do. And believe it or not, I actually am normally quite an impulsive person and someone who can be led by emotion. And I think the thing that made me approach FPL in a different way is recognizing that and going, well, you know what? If I try and take that out of my game, maybe I'll be better. So yeah, I spend most of my time trying to second guess any biases that I'm bringing into it. And I find that an analytical approach helps me with that. Other people may find the opposite.
Yeah, lovely stuff. And usually, if we have any kind of analytical segment in our pod, Seb usually kind of goes for that as well. And he's absolutely brilliant with assessing teams and who to target and what could be continuing to happen in games and things like that. So we are very much appreciative of having Seb on our pod. Rich, you are slightly different to Seb in the way you approach the game. I think your probably your best finish is better than Seb's, but you're a little bit more spiky potentially. But we love having you on here because you're different. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, this feels a bit like when you start a new job and you have to pretend you like cooking and going to the cinema. And it really does feel like that. But no, I don't like either.
What's your biggest weakness? Well, I'm just too committed to the job.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'm just too good. It's
my captains are just too crazily good. Yeah. But yeah, I think I'm trying to be a little more like Seb. As in, I used to be quite reckless. But it got me quite a lot of good ranks back in the day. Like there'd always be these big moments where I know looking back now, I got lucky. Things like captaining Aguero and he got a hat trick when he Pookie. Was, very low owned.
Pookie.
Pookie. But yeah, so I did quite well, but I think I was reckless, and I'm trying to rein it in a little bit because 4 seasons ago now I finished 750,000. So I did start using analytics to, sense check some of my decisions. I mean, I'm not averse to risky picks. Sometimes I don't always get nervous over them. Although there was a few things at the end of last season I regret where I didn't, like we mentioned the Wilson v Isak thing.
Yeah.
And I think I didn't take the risk there. So I'm definitely a lot safer than I used to be.
Do you find that the last 3 or 4 years, with all the postponements, COVID, Queen deaths, all that kind of stuff, has meant that your Queen deaths and stuff has hurt your style of play, if that makes sense? Because taking those risks when so many teams have double game, all that kind of stuff. Do you feel like that's had something to do with it a little bit?
Maybe. I mean, the 750k year, just to mention, the worst one. That felt like every single move I did just went wrong. I remember bringing in 3 Arsenal players, and it wasn't even postponements. It was stuff. Aubameyang got malaria, Saka got injured, Tierney got injured, and I'd done like a -12 to bring in 3 Arsenal that nobody had, for example. So, I mean, there's always luck, isn't there? There can be good luck. I mean, after the World Cup last year, I think at the World Cup I was about 800k, 900k.
Yeah.
And then I had a run of incredible luck.
Yeah.
And I caught you both up for a while.
Yeah.
So it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? It's consistently having that luck for the entire year.
Yeah.
And even, I mean, Seb came, 4K last year and still had, moments of bad luck.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
You
already mentioned it, yeah.
So you kind of mentioned there, Rich, I was just sort of thinking, like, maybe to better answer your question, Andy. I think the thing that I'd like to try to be as a manager, and doesn't mean I'll succeed in this, is I feel like, especially with where FPL is now, right? There's so much information out there, whether that be just lineups, models, content creators giving you advice. People are just better at playing the floor of the game, right? No one is anywhere near as bad as they used to be if they choose to engage. So I guess what we're all trying to do is push that ceiling, right? And we know the ceiling is so luck-based that that's a really hard thing to do. And so I think an approach that really resonates with me is not trying to push the ceiling every week. Just be happy to hold on to that floor and stay there and stay there and stay there until there's an opportunity, and then go for it. So really maximize the opportunities when they come along, but don't take too many of them. So I don't know, for some sort of terrible cycling analogy, you've got your peloton, stay in that peloton, let other people do the work, whatever. And then when the opportunity comes, nip out in front. Now, of course, to nip out in front, you need the luck, right? Mine was Wilson. But I went for it once with Foden, I guess at Christmas, and it went wrong. I went with it with Wilson and it went right. But if you're doing that every single week, I think you're going to damage your rank more than you help your rank.
Peloton's the new template, isn't it? That's what everybody's saying now. Stay in the peloton, and then.
Oh, is that actually a
Yeah, it
thing?
is. Yeah, that's what people are starting to call it.
I must
now.
have scrolled past that, and then yeah.
And last but very much least is me. I'm comfortably probably the worst manager here in terms of overall ranks and things like that. But I'm not awful. I wouldn't say. I am definitely here because I'm the most handsome. But there you go. Thank you,
You've
Seb.
not really had a bad season.
Yeah, do you know what, we were looking at this the other day, weren't we? Because they brought out their kind of overall how you've gone in your lifetime kind of thing, and I don't think I've had one below 200,000, but that was
nice.
Like 15 years ago, whatever it was. So I've got like 15 years worth of overall ranks,
Nice.
so that helps a bit.
I've got like 400Ks when there was only 500K people playing or something. Yeah.
But there you go. So that's us in a nutshell. Thank you so much for joining us for the first time. We will not do this every week, so don't worry. Unless there's someone new on, you never know if we ditch Rich at some point. So moving forward, then, what are we going to be talking about tonight? Let's get into it a little bit. We're going to be talking about Liverpool. We're going to be talking about their average positions. We're going to be talking about Trent, because that is a big thing that everybody's talking about at the moment is Trent. And we're going to be looking a little bit at their matches from last season. We're going to be looking at Chelsea. We're going to be looking at their tactics. Going to be looking at Nkunku, especially because he has proven to be very popular probably for a good reason. Going to be looking at Brighton. Rich is going to talk us through Brighton a little bit with his table. Oh yes, and then we're going to be having a little look at Arsenal as well, in particular their midfielders. We're going to look at 2 drafts. We're not going to show you our drafts. The reason is because they are practically identical, even though we only realised that tonight when we sent them to each other. So we're going to show you a 3-5-2 and a 3-4-3. That's one that we've kind of made up on the spot, but we think they're going to be quite good anyway. We're going to play a little game that's going to be a regular every week. We're going to be playing some over or under with players' points, which would be quite nice as well. And then we're going to do the com team.
No prep for that.
At the end, we're going to do the community team at the end. We have a new way of doing the community team this year, and I'm hoping the person that's going to help us is in the chat ready for us as well. We are also going to do a bit of a Q&A at the end too, so it should be quite a good evening. So Seb, we're going to start with you, my friend, and sorry, you're not going to be able to do any prep for the over and under at the end now, because you are going to talk us through Liverpool. I've put Liverpool's average positions up on the screen. These are from their 2 friendlies they've done so far. Talk us through what you've noticed.
Yeah, Rich, take over. I need to win the game. Sure. So I think starting a new season on a new pod is always an interesting one, because you could go super high level or we could go a bit specific. I think we've gone somewhere in the middle. So there's a few things we won't mention tonight. Hopefully we can mention it next week. But we've picked out a few questions, I guess, that might be interesting to look into. So starting with Liverpool, and then specifically looking at this idea of, was it the last 10 games last season or so? They changed their approach, their structure. And by eye, that seemed to work. But I wanted to ask if on paper that actually has worked, and therefore should we pay more or less respect to them in an FPL sense? And then also Trent, obviously he was the big proponent of how that's changed. So what's changed in his position? We can look at some stats and stuff maybe next week. This is a slightly more general look at their formation. And then really Liverpool, because we're not seeing them in many drafts at the moment. Yeah, Salah's expensive and maybe Trent's expensive. So is there maybe a reason we can change that up and go for some of them? So starting here with a couple of the preseason friendlies, there's a few we'll look at here as examples. The first one is against Fürth, and then we have Leicester as well. The reason I pulled these 2 out, obviously there's only 3 to choose from, but I thought they were interesting to illustrate what we've seen from Liverpool in the past and what we might see going forward. Important to mention that if you're watching this on the screen, on the left-hand side, Liverpool are going from bottom to top attacking. And on the right-hand side, they're going from top to bottom. So you need to flip those. Maybe I should have done that. This is from SofaScore, by the way. So thanks for SofaScore for the images. On the left-hand side, we still see the same sort of structure at the back with 2, which is this thing that's become popular, right? You know, your 2-3-4-1 or whatever variation of that Arsenal, City, Liverpool have started using, typically inverting a fullback, but also, you know, what happens with those 2 other midfielders, whether one pushes up to go into a 10 or what have you. The left-hand side is interesting because of the front rather than the defence or the middle. So Trent notionally started at 6 in this game. He's number 66 there. You can see him right in the middle of the pitch. And on the right-hand side, he actually started at right back. That is kind of in the same position. So we'll look at him in detail in a minute. But that front 3, which I believe is Diaz, Jota, Hakpo is 18 there just behind. And 50, I want to say,
Wasn't
I
Doak,
cannot remember
was
who
it?
that was. Oh, thank you, Dirk. Yeah, Dunk. Thank
Doak.
you. Who's amazing, by the way, but I don't think it's going to be an FPL option anytime soon. So what we see there is actually almost like the old front three. The two wide players pushing narrow and forward. The centre forward, number 9, actually dropping off, which is what Jota's going to do if he plays that position, Jota. And Hakpo, who I guess sort of played almost a 10. He lined up almost at 8, played 10 there, not the striker. So that is almost the old 4-3-3, or a bit of the 4-2-3-1 if you like, but of course with this idea of the 2 and the 4, which is what we're going to see, across these formations. On the right hand side, then again, we still have those 2 centre backs. That's obviously going to stay. We then have Trent, who started at right back here and has come into that central midfield position. And then on the left-hand side, we have Robertson. You can see him in both graphics. He's actually occupying a very, very similar position where he does get high, of course, but he may well come narrow, especially in this new shape. He's probably going to get less high than he used to, but he is still Robertson. He's going to push on, even if he's meant to be forming a back 3 in defence. But the interesting bit again here is now we see an actual proper number 9. That is almost a traditional 9 with 4 in behind. So that 9 is Darwin Núñez. We then have Salah on the right-hand side. Lots of discussion over his position, but I think that looks promising enough, and we'll look in a bit more detail in a moment. 42 on the left-hand side is Clark. Now, he, in theory, starts in a midfield 3, but what he's been doing here is pushing out and providing that width on the left-hand side. And then we have Jota and the number 10, who is McAllister there, forming those 2 behind. In the previous graphic, you see McAllister a little bit deeper, but you could see how it might form that same shape if Hakpo wasn't involved. This is the one on the right-hand side that interests me the most, and it's maybe, does that make Darwin an option? Now, I know, I'm a big fan of Darwin in the past, so I will leave that alone for now, because it's going to be Hakpo, it's going to be Darwin, it could be Jota as well we see in that 9 role, and that's going to very much change how they play it. 1 traditional 9, and then maybe 2 more that drop off a bit more like the old Firmino role. But the takeaways for me are those 2 different attacking shapes. I think Salah will be fine in both, and if we get a 9 like Darwin playing, I'd be very encouraged by that. And then one last bit would be McAllister playing more of a 10 than an 8. But I think, unfortunately, with penalties probably no longer his, he likely isn't an option. We're probably looking at forwards, Trent, Salah, maybe a Diaz or a Jota or a Hakpo.
Yeah, and the other big thing as well, which I know you've left out there because you know it's coming up next, is Trent, isn't it? Because Trent is playing that kind of inverted role a little bit at the moment because they don't have that defensive midfielder that is going to be... Obviously, these games were maybe a little bit easier, but they don't have that defensive midfielder. It looks like Fabinho's gone, or if Fabinho has gone. They are looking at Lavia, but they haven't got Lavia in yet. So Trent is seemingly at the moment kind of coming into the kind of central midfield role. And we're looking at kind of, does that diminish him a little bit? And I know, Seb, you've made these tables here to kind of show where he's been playing so far. What's your impression of this at the moment in terms of he's an 8 million defender now? If you're going to invest in someone like Trent, and we know he has, been absolutely amazing value for years, he's been one of the best assets in FPL for years and years. But looking at this now, if this is going to become a regular, what are you thinking about his value so far this season?
I mean, is that a good time to move on to the next slide? Oh, you have already, are you? You
Clever
host,
yeah.
Supreme. You spent
Hostess
the summer practicing, yeah. You've been sat there OBS over the summer going, now, do the screen. I'm looking forward to the puns then. Yeah, I think like the overall structure is interesting, and obviously we've seen this change in shape, and I do have something as whether it's been effective at the moment. Trent, as you say, really expensive, probably ridiculously, given I think he's been cheap in the last few years. Too expensive in a relative sense. If other defenders, other midfielders, strikers, whatever, will also be a bit more expensive, but it basically feels like him, Salah, and Haaland have been priced up to maybe where they should be. Although Haaland's still about 85% owned, so he probably hasn't, or alternatives aren't competitive enough, maybe with Kane not being anyone's looking at the moment. So I think a lot of drafts won't have him, and I think that's fair, because for me, I want him at right back. And even if that's inverting, as we'll maybe see in these graphics in a second, I think that's slightly better. I don't expect him to start at 6, and I can cover that. But his real threat from an FPL sense comes from being on the right, putting balls into the box, and obviously we have set pieces as well. He isn't necessarily going to be doing that anymore. Now, Liverpool, in a real life football sense, may get even more out of him, but I don't think we will as FPL managers, despite him being good at the end of the last season. But have a look at that in a moment as well. So these are the 3 friendlies then we have on screen from Liverpool's pre-season so far. The first two we've also already seen one of the first matches, but this is and then against Karlsruhe as well, where in both these matches, Trent, you can see 66 in the middle there, started at number 6 notionally. Now Liverpool are trying to sign a number 6, whether that's Polino, I think might be injured now actually, or Lavia. Yeah. They are trying to sign someone so that Trent doesn't have to live in midfield anymore. But they do need a 6, and I think if they start the season without, there's a chance he plays there. Maybe Thiago, maybe goes to right back. The player playing at right back in his absence is Connor Bradley, I think is his name, who's a recruit from last year and is very talented. He's been doing an impression of this inverted right back role that Trent would do. You can see him number 26 there on a couple of the graphics. He does also get forward down the right hand side, but will come inside. So even if Trent goes back to right back, I think that's a clear sign that he's going to be inverting. Right, the old Trent is gone. We have a new order with Liverpool structure, and that's as much around possession and how they want the midfield to work as how they want Trent to work. The thing you can see around then the numbers here, which are the players, is Trent's heat map specifically. So in those first two, where he's playing 6, a lot more central, maybe not quite as much in the areas that I want him for FPL. The left-hand side, the first one, there is a bit, you can see on Salah's number there, right? He's over where Salah would be, which is obviously where Salah's then going to come inside and have that goal threat. He's the furthest forward in that graphic as well, which is nice. At the bottom, just beneath the arrows that show which way we're going, I've also put Trent's touches and Liverpool's possession in those matches, just for an idea of, if those touches mean anything. So in the first match, 64 touches from the sixth position. But Liverpool have nearly 70% possession. So that's huge. And actually, 64 probably isn't that high compared to other sixes or players that would control possession in teams with 70% possession. In the middle match there, he has 33 touches with 55%, which is all right, not great. And then finally against Leicester, when he's playing the right back, but obviously inverted. So his average position is quite similar to the two previous matches. But the bit that interests me is obviously your average. If you get one here and one here, your average is in the middle. But what interests me is, okay, cool. Sometimes he picks up in defence, sometimes he's in central midfield. But is he in the positions I want him in for FPL? It's one match, it's pre-season, but that's the one that encourages me most, where he's actually getting in those positions where Salah's going to tuck in and he's going to be able to deliver balls into the box, which is what matters for us. 55 touches there, 62% possession, about in the middle of the two, but enough for me to think if that's where he plays from right back, not midfield, even though he's inverting, I would consider him, even if maybe he's a bit expensive. If he's at 6, which I don't think he will be, but if they don't sign a 6 as a chance, I will go nowhere near him.
Yeah. What's your take on it, Rich? Because everything that I'm reading, everything that Seb's said there so eloquently as well, it worries me that I'm spending 8 million on somebody that I'm not sure where they're going to be playing, how effective they're going to be. It's not like back in the day when we had someone like Leighton Baines at that price where you always knew he was going to be playing left back. He was on the free kicks. He was on the corners. Like, you're not necessarily getting that now, especially with some of the people they brought in, like Szoboszlai, who's going to be on some set pieces. Is this just everything is going to be hurting Trent? And don't get him to start with. Get him for 7.5 million in 10 weeks' time.
I think what's hurting him is being the pricing of other players. I think his pricing, it felt perfect at the time because it was one of the first ones they did. But then when the value of everyone else is so high, I think that's why a lot of us have started taking Trent and Salah out of their team, not because they're bad assets. What's interesting though, looking at this, and I know there's risk over Robertson's minutes, and I get that he could play, in a back three, etc. But you look at the heat map of Robertson on here. Then I just looked at while Seb was talking, and that was brilliant. I went through SofaScore, and I mean Trent's not really had touches in the box. I mean, as you can see on the screen. Robertson, across the same three games, he's only played, I think, 45 minutes in the three. Had it looks like 6 touches in the box and a couple of shots. So while there may be risk over Robertson's minutes, for example, he's the same price as Trippier. Yeah. So I know this is going much more into strategy talk, but you could, if you can't afford Trent, maybe you could look at Robertson, and then you've got an easy move to Trippier when their fixtures improve. From memory, it's game week 4. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of good arguments against him. So I think the problem with Trent is he's just so much more expensive than the other defenders.
And the fixtures aren't amazing. Like they've got Bournemouth game week 2.
I would like him
helps.
Though. Yeah, I would like him. No, it really is. It depends on the other players, because if I can afford him, as in, I pick my player as I want, I've got a nice first sub, and I can afford Trent, I'm going to go for Trent. Yeah. Regardless of if he's right back or playing at 6, I'll just go for Trent.
Yeah. And it,
But then it just got me thinking about Robertson because there is quite a big saving at 1.5 million.
yeah.
I don't know. Have either of you considered that? Because I hadn't until just then.
It was the worry with Simicus that worried me with Robertson.
Yeah.
Is that it? Not that I expect it to happen, but imagine you get him knowing that Bournemouth game is really why you want him, and he
Yeah, it
doesn't
would be
play
a
that
short-term
game.
play. It would
Yeah,
literally be
exactly.
3 weeks, then switch to trips.
Yeah.
I think a quick correction I should throw in as well. 26 is Robertson, of course. You just mentioned that. Thank you. The chat mentioned that. Thank you for the correction. I read my own chart upside down. The point I was making, however, about Bradley, who was 84, you can see him on the right-hand side on that left-hand graphic, tucked in, but also, actually as far forward as Robertson, just tucked in a little more and a bit more crowded because that's where Liverpool are holding possession. Which leads me just onto the Robertson one. I think it's an interesting shout. He's 6.5, isn't he? Which, if it was Robertson of old and Liverpool of old, which is, your 4-3-3, flying fullbacks, the heavy metal football, brilliant, great price. And I think, was it almost 4 years ago where there was that Robertson or Trent question, and actually going Robertson
Both.
almost edged it because it was a little bit cheaper, and then everyone ended up on both.
Trent was always better.
Okay, fair. But I think for the value, do you think Robertson was like? I think he asked the question, right?
I remember one year Trent was cheaper than Robertson after Robertson had that breakout season FPL wise. I remember a season where Trent was
Robert was like there first, wasn't he, in terms of as an option? Yeah, fair. But I think so. If it was that Robertson, yes, definitely, because that's a good saving. But I don't think we're going to see enough. And I think as well with the structure, it's not just the formations and the average positions like we're showing here. There is a move to trying to hold a bit more possession. The signings, your McAllister, your Szoboszlai, they are trying to maybe just change a little bit how they play. There's still the press off the ball, and that's actually a big thing they're working on, I think, because the defense hasn't been that great. And obviously Trent moving inside as well. Some of the arguments are that's to try and cover the defense, because Henderson, when he bombed on, Henderson used to drop and cover. There was Fabinho who could come into like a back two to make a three as well. Since those players have dropped off and now left, I think, and people have recognised how to get around the press and how to then expose Trent. I think they are looking for solutions to that. I don't know if this is the solution. It still leaves the same area of the pitch open. It just means they can do different things in possession. And I think the things they're trying to do in possession don't suit Robertson as much as they used to. I'd be worried about him dropping into a back three more often than he appeared in the opposition box.
Yeah, and that's the worry with him. I just got thinking, looking at these heat maps, he's not far off. And then if you actually go, I know I didn't tell you about this before, but if you go on SofaScore or an app that has the heat maps, he's got all the touches in the box. Trent doesn't have that. Obviously, I understand what Trent offers. Obviously, Trent offers a lot, and if they were the same price, I'd go for Trent. And I'm probably not going to go for Robertson, but it just got me thinking because I hadn't seen much discussion around Robertson. So I mean, if we were confident in his minutes, I think there's a conversation there, especially because a few people, like I know you had it, Andy, where you had a couple of million, didn't know how to spend it.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah.
But I think you've alluded to there as well with Trent, like, even though if he's notionally playing in midfield and even if his average position is further forward, as we said, that's average position. It's average position. First one of the new season. It's not average position that we really care about, right? It's furthest forward position, and how often does that occur? And I think in this new role, Trent is, even though you might think he'd be further forward, he's going to get further forward less than he used to, and in lesser dangerous positions, even if he's higher more often. So yeah, I mean, I think we're probably making the argument here to look past both, right?
Well, that's the question I was going to ask now. So before we move off of Liverpool, just talk to me about Trent. It's really, really quickly. Seb, are you going to be starting with Trent this season?
I don't think so, no.
No. Rich? Ooh.
No. I thought I was going to... There were 3 players I thought were essential. It would need some major enablers to come in.
Yeah.
Like Brownhill to be on penalties. And move to City. I can't think of a scenario. I can't think of a genuine scenario where that's going to change. But
Brownhill on penalties at City, then I can have Trent.
But even then, Brownhill's 5 million, so it probably needs to be a 4.5 million that moves. But you get what I'm saying, though. It doesn't really depend on Trent. It's not a knock on Trent. It's just
100%.
Structure of our teams.
And I see that all the time. People saying things like, "Yeah, but Trent's Trent. You've got to have him," and it's like, "Yeah, but." You can have Trent if he's 5 million, but if he's 8 million, it makes a difference, and that's why they've done it.
That's the thing, and the sacrifice you make to get to Trent is actually kind of similar to the financial sacrifice to get to Salah. And then with Salah, you've got the Gameweek 2 captaincy, you've got a captaincy if Haaland's benched or injured in the Super Cup, etc., etc. So I'm leaning more towards, if I'm going to go for a Liverpool player, a premium one, it's probably going to be Salah over Trent.
Yeah. FPL Farrell's in the chat, by the way, saying, Rich 15 minutes ago said, yeah, I'm trying to be a safer manager now. 50 minutes later, let's punt on Robbo, lads.
I just safer.
Right. Seb, we've got up here the Chelsea team from when they played Brighton. Now, Chelsea are a bit of a nightmare at the moment in terms of they are greatly reducing their squad. They've sold a ridiculous amount of players already. They're bringing in players at a ridiculous pace as well. They're already being linked. They're being linked with Sanchez now. I don't know why Todd Bowley bought Chelsea. He might as well have just bought Brighton, hadn't he? Like the amount of Brighton players he wants to buy. But just talk us through their team a little bit here, and talk us through some of those players that we're potentially going to be looking at from Chelsea. Now, I'm not saying that's who we're going to be starting with from game week 1, because from game week 3 onwards, obviously their fixtures look lovely, but just talk us through it a little bit.
Sure. So the graphic we have on screen there is again from SofaScore. Thank you for that. It is just the Brighton preseason match. This obviously isn't going to be the first choice lineup or anything, but it quite clearly shows, we've got a 4-2-3-1 going. There's another graphic in a second that maybe shows how that might move. And I think the areas of interest are that front 3 or 4 and who's going to play there and how they're going to play there. And then the fullbacks. I think we can comfortably let everyone else lie. There isn't a Rudiger from past seasons. If Reece James is fit, is he ever fit? No. He'd be incredible. We'd love that. Although worth noting that Malo Gusto has been actually really good in preseason. As much as you want to take preseason performances into account, he's been good. And then Chilwell, which is probably everyone's defender of choice at the moment, mostly just because I think you're more likely to see minutes or the confidence of continued minutes than you would with Reece James. And he's playing exactly how you would expect in a Pochettino fullback enabling system. The interesting part for me then is this next bit. Now, any Chelsea fans, please do excuse my hastily rushed graphic here. I'm sure you could improve upon it. But what I wanted it to do is just highlight a few points. So we have our back 2 there in the back 4. We can leave them alone. We have Enzo. We can leave him alone. Of course, the numbers aren't the squad numbers either. Of course, they're just the positions. Our number 8, probably leave that alone as well, whether they sign someone, whether it's Gallagher, whatever happens there. So then it's the fullbacks. I think that's easy enough. If James is fit, get him. If you also are confident he stays fit. If not, Chilwell's there for you. There's less competition for his position. Cucurella's been poor still. And some of the other players that may compete with that either might go out on loan or might play as well in the squad. So I think he'll be fine, especially with fewer matches this season, you would hope. Then there's Sterling, who... Now, this may change depending on, how the team's lined up, who's in the team. But one of these players will likely hold a bit more width and push slightly further forward. In this example, that would be Sterling on the right. And then the left, which is Mudryk in this example, of course, those player names could swap, is going to tuck inside a little bit more. And this is the interesting bit. We saw it with Liverpool, where there was that cluster around Trent and the right back, and maybe even Salah coming in, McAllister. You often see this in a team where there's like a cluster in a position where they want to overload bodies, hold the ball, move it around, and then stretch the play elsewhere and create space which those players can move the ball into, and that's where you create your opportunities. I think with Chelsea, what we're going to see is Chilwell bombing on down this left-hand side, providing width and overlap, even goal threat. He gets into the box quite a lot, and he's been doing it again in pre-season, which shouldn't reflect performance, but does show that the structure's there and it's what they're trying to do. Mudryk tucking in, don't know if he'll be an FPL option. I know the joke from last year, maybe all way heavy on us, but he's not too badly priced. If he was nailed, if Sterling was doing nothing, maybe he's a consideration. Then there's Jackson and Nkunku, and we'll come on to Nkunku a bit in a minute. I've got him here in the 10, but moving left, moving up front, swapping with Jackson. And I think that's what we're going to see. I think the 9 will be Jackson, which I didn't think it would be a couple of weeks ago, but he's played preseason. He's looked impressive in preseason. I don't believe we've seen Nkunku at 9 for very long, and if we have, it's been to facilitate other things. So one small negative is that Nkunku is going to be an out of position forward, actually playing in midfield. However, that's kind of what he's always done, and I think he still will have some of the best threat in that team. Because as we see there, he's capable of moving left. He may well play on the left as well and assume that role that Mudryk has there. And he will interchange up front and come up front. And I think that may just segue us onto looking at Nkunku specifically, unless there's anything you wanted to add.
It does. I just wanted to ask Rich before we moved on to the Nkunku specific slides here. Rich, I've just asked in the chat how many Chelsea you think are starting with. Most people are saying 1. but I'm seeing Chilwell in drafts. I'm seeing Jackson creeping into drafts now. I'm seeing Nkunku in drafts as well. Have you got a preference at the moment out of those three? Who are you kind of looking at, or has maybe been in and out of your team so far?
I mean, a few of them have been in and out of my team. Chilwell was the one I've got at the moment. My plan is to have him as first sub.
Yeah.
And then he's there and ready for game week 2, and start to bring Chelsea players in then.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there's a few question marks over players like Sterling, aren't there? And I also feel like Nkunku and Jackson, maybe it'd be nice to see a couple of games just to be 100% sure which you go for. Because I know we talked about Wilson and Isak earlier. We seem to mention them every single week.
Still
An advantage those of us who didn't have Isak or Wilson had is we could cherry pick which one we wanted on the week we wanted them.
Yeah.
So the advantage of not going with one is you can pick the one you want, after 2 weeks, after 3 weeks, after 4 weeks, and see that little bit more. I mean, I think if I was going to go for one of the strikers, I'd go in Nkunku.
Yeah.
Because it's rumoured that he might be on penalties. But
truthfully,
I like looking at the defenders. Chilwell and Seb mentioned James as well. Yeah. If he's fit, I'm going to go. I might even go both Chilwell and James.
And I mean, we were looking, weren't we, at the beginning of this season and thinking, which way is it going to go? Is it going to be that Pochettino kind of pins them back a little bit, or is it going to be that he's going to be using them like they've been used before? And I think no matter who you are, if you go into Chelsea and you see Chilwell and James there, and just how effective they are going forward, and even in pre-season, like Seb's already said, they've looked really good. Chilwell's looked absolutely brilliant, so I can see why everybody's going for them anyway.
The only worry is I don't believe they played at the same time, not played considerable minutes at the same time. So there are some murmurings that one side's, attacking more than the other and stuff.
Yeah.
But they're both hard to resist, and it's hard to pick which one's better. I mean, I think if James is fit,
James is
James, but Chilwell's not bad.
No, and James just, he's made of poppadoms, isn't he? But if we move on to the Nkunku specific ones now. So Seb, you've got a few kind of heat maps for us. We're just going to talk to us a little bit about Nkunku. A few people are starting with him because they really like him. Maybe they remember him from UEFA Champions League fantasy football, where he's been an absolute legend in that. Obviously, he's now playing for Chelsea. What are we kind of expecting from him? And would you start with him is the big question.
I'll answer that first question last. If I'm going 4-3-3 or 3-4-3, sorry, yes, because it also gives me my route to Darwin, which I desperately want. I think the reason most aren't is because Haaland's there, and then there's Jesus, which does seem a better route in, at least at first.
Mm-hmm.
I totally understand going in Nkunku, 0.5 cheaper, very kind price, although so is Jesus really. And it's attractive, but I think it's very easy to get there soon as well. And it's just a shame he's a forward. Although if he was a midfielder, we'd have even more midfield options. Speaking of his positioning then, this is his progression in the Bundesliga over the last 4 seasons positionally. So these are seasonal heat maps. Of course, this doesn't provide the context of who's playing with him or when he's done what, but it's just a very, very helicopter view. Early on, you can see very much starts on the left, basically a left winger who plays like a 10, looks to create. And actually what we've seen over the past few seasons, which is in a minute, is him move from providing assists to providing goals, which is better for FPL, especially if you're a forward, because that's where you get your bonus points. In 2021, then we're seeing this more number 10 come in. So he's mirroring what he did on the left in 1920, on the right as well, maybe getting a few more touches further forward, playing more football as well, actually. And he was playing 10 here. Then 21-22 and 22-23 are quite similar. What we saw here is him basically playing as part of a front two. Now, of course, in all of this, he is swapping around. He does play at 10. He does play on the left sometimes, but mostly playing as like a support striker with Andre Silva, Timo Werner later as well. Never as the main striker. Even in a few times when he started, in theory, as the 9 with 2 attacking mids behind, he would drop and drift and someone would come in, often Timo Werner more recently. And we know Timo Werner's a runner, was brilliant in the Bundesliga before Chelsea, then they broke him and now he's all right. And Nkunku has very much been the star. And I think the nice thing about Chelsea, if there is a nice thing about Chelsea, Leeds fan, is that he can assume that role again. How often do we see maybe Jadon Sancho is not the best example, but a superstar in a team elsewhere come to a new team where they can no longer be the superstar, be that tactically or profile wise, and maybe therefore fall off? I think Nkunku can come in and have the same impact, proportionally, of course, to the Bundesliga, not saying he'll have the same numbers, as he did at Leipzig, because he will be able to play that. Is he 10? Is he left? Is he striker? almost doesn't matter. He's the main creator. He will be the creative focal point of that team. And if he chooses to go into the box and try and poach a goal, he can do that. If he chooses to hang outside and try and create stuff, he can do that. And I don't think it actually matters if we see him left 10 or striker, depending on what's around him, because we will see similar output. And I think we saw that at Leipzig.
Yeah, and I love the fact he can play all along the front there, because it just means that his minutes are just that little bit more secure, doesn't it? You know, if there's an injury or if they need something to change around, then he'll fit into whatever peg you want him to be in, won't he? But so we got some stats up here as well. Obviously, we won't talk about these for too long, but you got some stats just to back up some of the things you were saying just then.
Sure. So probably want to pause, go away, look at in more detail. This is FBref for this. So at the top, we just have, they do like a last 365 days last year comparison with other players in the same position. So forwards, because FPL, that's more relevant for us. But I've also put your attacking mids and wingers in there just so you can see. Lots of green, which is good. We like that. Very, very, very attractive. Obviously, when we come to attacking mids and wingers, his goal threat goes up even further, related to those positions, and his assist threat goes down. That shows, as we'll see in a minute, actually he's become more of a goal scorer and less of a provider. That would have looked different in previous seasons. But what we're seeing there as well is some very healthy non-penalty XG, some very, very healthy non-penalty goals. So either a good finisher or fortunate, but also some brilliant creativity. That's his main strength, especially versus those forwards. You can see how he isn't just that number 9. He is there to create, 94 percentile for shot creating actions is fabulous. There's only 6% of players who are rated higher than him. And then we just have his 4 seasons at Leipzig there as well, where obviously goals, assists sort of chime with his XG and XAG, which is expected assists there. I think he's been on penalties at one point as well, so obviously you'll see a slight disparity in those numbers. But what we generally see is that his combined totals have gone up, especially in 21-22. He was absolutely fantastic. Although his underlying numbers nearly as good last season, just a fair few fewer assists to go along with that. I wonder if that's because someone else joined. But we've seen that shift from mostly assists to mostly goals, especially last season. And I think that's what we know. Chelsea didn't buy him. Was it Christmas they actually agreed to sign him?
I think so, yeah.
So they haven't necessarily bought him on the strength of his goal scoring alone. They've bought him maybe based on that 21-22 season. So just to back up, I think they're looking for an all-rounder, not a great comparison in terms of profile, but in terms of contribution to team, a Bruno Fernandes. That's the role he's coming in to do in terms of what he would contribute to the team.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, he could make an absolute mockery of that 8 million price tag, couldn't he? Like, I think a lot of people were very surprised when he first came in. I mean, Rich, why aren't people starting with Nkunku? What, everything that we've said already. Obviously, he's been absolutely brilliant in the Bundesliga. He's joining a Chelsea team that's now got Pochettino in charge, and we know Pochettino kind of gets the best out of most of his attacking players. Why isn't Nkunku in 30-40% of teams at the moment?
Yes, it's a few things. There's the opening fixture, first of all, against Liverpool. Obviously, that always seems to be 0-0. New player to the league. I think that's another reason. I guess you just want to wait a few weeks and see, because I don't think people fully trust Chelsea either. I know they've been very impressive in pre-season, but I guess the key there is that it's in pre-season. Yeah. Look at Chelsea last season. Obviously, we're expecting them to be better. It would be hard not to be better. So I think I can understand why people want to wait and see.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. And I think an awful lot of people, and a few people have done it in the chat already as well, are going to be talking about Werner and going to be talking about the fact he came from the Bundesliga to Chelsea, and he was in about 40% of teams before game week 1, wasn't he? And everybody said there is no way this can fail. And obviously he didn't do what we expected him to do in the league either. Still a good player, obviously, but we thought he was going to hit the ground running and basically do what Haaland did. So it'll be interesting to see Nkunku.
There is that comparison. But I also think there's so many good strikers this year as well. I mean, I think back to Werner, I don't feel like there was that many other options. I mean, I've just wrote down like Jesus, Haaland, Darwin, Watkins, Wilson.
Yeah.
All players I'm going to be looking at, maybe a bit of a delay on Wilson, for example, but they're all players I'd consider higher at the moment, despite how good the stats look.
Yeah.
If he had penalties, definitely, for example, that would twist things massively.
Which remains to be seen, right?
You seem to have forgotten Solanke, by the way. Solanke.
Solanke. I was going to write down Solanke, but I don't want to offend the Chelsea fans.
Yeah, I was going to say Solanke, please.
I think like the Bundesliga tax, it's a bit of a derogatory way of calling it, but it's true in a hopefully non-offensive way, right? You go from a league that maybe is easier for better players to score goals to a league where it isn't, and especially you go from being the star in a really good team to maybe slightly lesser in a slightly lesser team, although still very good. But that doesn't mean he should necessarily turn into Timo Werner, who, by the way, if I recall, still had very good underlying numbers. So if it was anything, it was his finishing, which is fine. You could just say he was a bad finisher, he lost his confidence, whatever. I will accept that. But then by necessarily you are assuming that Nkunku will do the same thing. And I don't think we see any evidence of that. So even if you wanted to knock these numbers down, 20% or something, it's still a healthy return. I think 7.5 is a kind price for that. Forward positioning is slightly unfortunate. And I think the only reason he isn't in more teams is, as Rich mentioned, there are so very many kindly priced options this year that we don't need to take that punt.
Yeah. And I mean, Bundesliga tax, some people didn't go for Haaland for that reason. Although I think Haaland's stats were much better.
Yeah.
Or a little bit better anyway.
And moving to Man City, I guess.
And he played for a slightly better team. Yeah.
Right. Lovely stuff. Nkunku. So, same as we did with Trent then. Seb, will you be starting with Nkunku?
If I go 3-4-3, yes, but I probably won't, so no.
Cool. Rich?
I'd have to start on 3-4-3 and be worried about Darwin Núñez for some reason.
Yeah, fair enough. For me, I think Watkins is higher than Nkunku to start the season for me, but from game week 3 onwards,
really?
Nkunku's really up in my thing, yeah.
It was funny because before yesterday, a lot of people that I saw looking at Chelsea strikers were looking at Jackson. So this could be something that flip-flops as well.
Yeah, it could do.
That's the other thing. When there's choice of more than one striker for a team, that does add weight to just delaying that decision a little bit.
Yeah, and that's where I really like that Nkunku can play kind of everywhere up the top there. Because if he doesn't play that striker role, he will play somewhere else, won't he?
Yeah. Plus, Sterling could be the one. I saw he was top of Mikel Topman's algorithm based on having 80 minutes.
No.
So he could be.
Oh, could be, couldn't he?
And it's true. All it takes is like a goal and assist from Sterling.
Sterling is
no
now
one's talking about
million.
Nkunku. No one's talking about Jackson.
How is Sterling now 7 million? Wasn't he 13 mil at one point?
That's the thing. It's a bargain. If he plays, it's a bargain if he plays. Which
You're
I
one of
guess
those
you could say
guys
for a lot of players.
that walks into a shop. The meat's been there for 2 weeks. It's now 10p and it's mouldy, and you're like, bargain. That's why.
Yeah, but mate, if you had a really good chef who's going to cook that up, you'd eat it, wouldn't you?
Is that what Poch is? Is it? He's a really
do you know
good
how
chef.
Do you know how that works? Do you know how chefing works? They can't
I don't know. Can't they just like cure it like jerky or something?
just cook the fuzz off, chef. Cook the fuzz off.
Cook the fuzz off.
Fire kills bacteria, right?
Do with cheese.
Oh dear. Right. Moving on to Brighton now. Then, Rich, you've done far too much listening so far. You've had it easy so far. And now we're going to move on to your table. Now, it's not your table.
Not my table.
It's not your table. But talk us through Brighton, because those fixtures to start with are just absolutely gorgeous. Those first 3 fixtures. And I think people are crazy for going no Brighton. And to be honest, I think most people need to have at least 2 Brighton players in their team. Defence seems fairly easy. Midfield does not seem easy. And somehow Brighton seem to have this unbelievable scouting network where they just get all the best young players seem to be at Brighton and be getting minutes and be playing well in pre-season. So talk us through it. Make some sense out of it for us, because we need someone to.
Yeah. So first of all, I wanted to thank Ron Frosk. So it's FPL_Ron Frosk on Twitter, or X as it's now known. Yeah. He kindly linked me to his spreadsheet where he's basically logging all the pre-season minutes for everything. And I think we should also say we were talking about Brighton a little bit before we recorded, or before we went live. Seb picked all the interesting teams. Not that Brighton aren't interesting, but I think there's just way too much risk around a lot of players. So while I agree with you, Andy, that we probably want to have a couple of Brighton players, like you also said, that there's players just appearing, from on loan in Belgium, like this Adingra. I didn't even know how to pronounce his name. Adingra. He was on loan in Belgium. He's a left winger, which Matoma is as well, and obviously has scored a brace. So just for people watching, this is a breakdown of the 3 friendlies that Brighton have played so far. What's useful about this is it shows you how many FPL points they'd have got, how many goals, assists, all of that stuff. Obviously, there's not that much data. It's a small sample, and it's pre-season as well. But for those listening, Danny Welbeck scored 2. El Pedro, who was becoming popular, scored 1, and then Adingra has scored 2. So on this, it's just interesting. And Pedro took that penalty as well. So I think that's why a lot of people started to, at least discuss him for, a kind price at 5.5. But there was a quote from Ferguson a couple of days ago where he said that he expects all three strikers to be rotated.
Yeah.
And that instantly makes me think, why do I want to bother with Brighton? Like, I think we can be pretty confident Matoma and March are going to play. But even that, is it guaranteed? I mean, I remember even under Potter, we never used to touch the Brighton attack as managers because there was so much rotation. Even players like Trossard were playing at wing back, etc. Gross gets moved around all over the place. So it was only because of all the doubles and trebles and because how good De Zerbi's been since he took over at Brighton that we went big on them last year.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, just to be safe, I'm going to have a Stupinan. I think that seems pretty safe. It's worth saying that Dunk hasn't played any minutes in pre-season. And obviously Colwell, he looks like he's staying at Chelsea.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go Stupinan. I know that's bold. Bold and unpredictable.
Stupinan.
Yeah. No, I'll go for Matoma or March, and I think it's going to be Matoma.
Yeah.
Just because I think he is the most nailed. But the fact that this guy came along, returned from loan, and scored 2 goals.
Yeah.
Not wanting to overreact, it just shows the depth they have. I mean, there's so many players on this list. Many managers wouldn't have even heard of that long ago. I mean, the end of last season when players like Buonanotte just suddenly appeared, and Cisco and
Cisco
that lot,
with his thong song,
yeah. But do you guys think it's worth the risk? I mean, they're a good team. They're nicely priced, but I don't want to be getting players that are playing 45 minutes when there's so many good options.
I don't see how Matoma and March are going to be losing that many minutes to start the season. Like I was on Above Average last night, and we were saying how we can just, although they've got all these other players kind of in the background, I don't see why their front four isn't going to be Matoma, March, Lallana, and Welbeck. Like, I don't see why it isn't going to be those. Yeah, I know. But I don't see why it isn't going to be those, because I feel like they're going to start the season with, these are our tried and tested guys. Yes, they're going to be getting maybe less minutes because we've got so many young players that are going to come on. But the longer that game goes on and they're not winning, they're going to keep those players on, I think. So Matoma and March, I don't see as a massive issue. But Seb, one thing I wanted to ask you, and obviously you can answer Rich's question as well. Matoma is owned by 37% of people. March is owned by 3% of people. Is that right, do you think? Or are people just being a bit crazy there with some little flashes Matoma had last season?
Like, purely based on the numbers, that seems wrong, because you'd say their output is quite likely to be very, very close. But obviously, if you said, oh, I think like Matoma is a 51% chance of being the best pick and March is a 49% chance of being the best pick, you'll pick the 51 and therefore it's 1-0 to Matoma. So I think that's what everyone is doing. And maybe there's a bit of a snowball, right? You see Matoma, you go with Matoma because other people are. But because it's a binary decision, even if I break it down into what I think is like a probabilistic score, I can't represent that in my FPL decisions. I have to pick one of them. So if everyone's coming to the same conclusion that Matoma is 2% better, it's going to show up at him being 30% better when it comes to the picks, right?
Yeah, no, I understand that. And it for me, I was looking at this the other day and I was just thinking, for some reason, and this happens every single pre-season, you make a draft nice and early, and then over a couple of weeks, you just start overthinking things. And it just seems to me like Brighton seem to be the team that people are overthinking. People are now going, oh, maybe I'll come off them, or maybe I'll downgrade Trent and I'll upgrade my Brighton midfielder. And all of a sudden, you're seeing less Matomas, less Marches in people's teams. But if you look at those first 3 fixtures, I don't see how you can't go with it. Like, I know, Rich, you've just said that you can't go. I can't see another kind of midfielder. I know we've got people like Mbumo, and you've got some other ones there, Eze as well. But I just don't see how you can ignore those first 3 fixtures. And I don't know, it worries me. It worries me if you're thinking, I need to come off of some of my Brighton now. And it just comes across a little bit like overthinking. Not you in particular, Rich, just in general.
No, it's a really good point, because I guess with someone like Matoma, a lot of us, because we were forced to keep Brighton players for so long, at the end of last season, many people have owned like Matoma, for example, since Christmas, or just after Christmas.
Yeah.
So they may well have become a little bit bored of owning Matoma.
Yeah.
And I guess because you just compared him to Mbumo, almost said Mbappe. Then you just compared him to Mbumo and Eze, for example. And I guess from an FPL point of view, the one exciting thing about those two players is they have penalties.
Yeah.
whereas Matoma doesn't. And that's why I really liked, and a lot of people like McAllister last year, because you had the penalties and the attacking threat. So it's a bit of a shame you can't get a Brighton midfielder who's nailed and has penalties anymore.
Yeah.
But I can see why people are second guessing it.
Hmm.
And that's
But
gross because Pedro's penalty, João Pedro took it when Gross wasn't on the pitch. Off the top
could
of
be
my head.
gross. I
So
mean,
is
then you
there
come
is
back
there
to
a
the issue
slight
of where
hope?
will Gross play,
True.
because that could be variable. But then does it really matter?
Yeah.
As in, I guess, how much do we want to analyze it really? Like, I guess the most important thing is that Gross actually plays or doesn't play. And I
Yeah.
wish we knew their minutes. It just feels a lot safer with Matoma and March.
Yeah. I mean, before we finish this Brighton section, then, and I know that I was a little bit shorter, but I mean, we could sit here and talk about Brighton for about 2 hours. Seb, before we finish here, are you going to have any Brighton to start your season, and who's it going to be, do you think?
Oh yeah. So when I first looked at it, I thought I'd go Steele pretty easy. I'm more confident than most that Steele will start as the number one. I see no reason for him not to. They've signed a goalkeeper who might be number one soon, but not yet. But I think maybe goalkeeper is better spent elsewhere. Estupinian is the one that everyone's going with. Seems fair enough. And then yeah, midfielder that Mbumu Mitoma 6.5 double header seems very very popular. Although those are the two positions that excite me least when I look at that template team, and I feel like that's one of the positions we have the most potential for something new to come along, if you know what I mean. Because you look at our teams, I don't think there's anything in there that anyone would have been like, oh, I never would have seen that coming 3 months ago. It all looks pretty standard, especially with the prices. And I wonder if a bit like last season, where the Brighton mids came along, that's the place where we'll get someone, even if it's like a Bowen again, right, who isn't brand new. But I wonder if that's the position where we'll see a bit of spice, and maybe I'm just willing it to happen because I'm kind of bored by those 6.5 mids, which is not very good analysis at all, but it's the truth.
Honestly,
Rich, you think just a Stupinan?
No, so I'm going to have a Stupinan and I'm going to have Matoma. I do feel a little, like Seb said, I do find it a little bit boring, but
I think it has to be.
I think it's silly not to, because the reason this segment's short is you just look at it and it's hard to really justify any players.
Yeah.
That if they're rotation risks, I don't think they're going to be worth it game week 1.
Yeah.
So I think Matoma is the least likely to be rotated.
Yeah.
So that's why I'd go for him. I do like the goalkeeper shout, but I got stung by Sanchez last year, and that's why I ended up owning Steele. And because I'm going to have Matoma and a Stupinan, I can't have both goalkeepers, and it will cost 0.5 more to do that. So, and I mean, I saw a video the other day shared on Twitter of the friendly of the game that the new keeper played, and he looked very good at his feet. I know Steele got an assist, but they were passing it around the back. I mean, he was taking some risks with it, but you can see why they've signed him. De Zerbi's changed keepers many times before, hasn't he? So
just about to say that Steele's XA is probably higher than most goalkeepers in the league. But
I'd imagine so.
You mentioned a good point there. Although I was saying about the fixtures there and having 2 Brighton makes an awful lot of sense for me, and I'm going to be honest, Stupinan and Matoma, I can't see myself moving off it. I don't think 3 is wise because after those first 3 game weeks, their fixtures obviously drop off quite heavily. So unless you are planning to move 3 Brighton players out of your team or be happy to bench 2 Brighton, I don't see many teams that are going to be able to do that. So I think 2 is the perfect amount, especially with the amount of rotation we're expecting from some of these players as well.
I do think they are a little bit fixture proof. I mean, if they look as good as they did last season, we'll probably just end up keeping them for a while as well, don't you think?
Yeah, maybe.
I'm really interested to see how they respond to, because obviously last season they were absolutely fabulous, both just in terms of individual performances and the system that was deployed. I think other teams couldn't handle both of those things. Other teams have now had this summer, and they all employ top quality analysts who will have been employed to break down teams like Brighton, work out how, when we play them, how can we beat them, where can we expose them. We've seen that happen with Liverpool Trent. We talked about that. Eventually, people found ways around it, even if it also needed Van Dijk to fall off. I wonder if Brighton, De Zerbi will have known that's coming and updated a few things as well, trying to keep ahead of the pack, or if people can identify ways they can get at them, or maybe people can't. Maybe Brighton still are just too good.
Yeah.
And so maybe for that reason, that if they do become, very, very, or continue to be very, very good, and there's all these cheap players, if someone emerges, maybe it's good to have 2 because I mean, we joked about it the other week that some of these players, are they just making them up? They just appear, making the name
It's
up
like
like a
regens, isn't it?
yeah. It basically is
I
a
was going to say,
regen.
mate, you play Football Manager, you know who they are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so maybe some
exactly.
4.5 regen become essential, and you don't want to block that by having a goalkeeper, for example, as your third.
Yeah, they'll have Diego Beckham next week or something like that come up, won't they? Yeah.
The
On all
chat
set
mentioned
pieces.
Richarlison, by
Yeah.
the way, for that sort of like, what is he, 7 million midfielder? That
Wow.
little bit of spice, I want that. That's what
And
I want.
that was the other thing I was going to say before we moved off this, is that I like the idea, like a Stupinan, I feel like I can bench, or I feel like I can play in other games because at least he's got that attack inside to him. Whereas someone like Matoma just seems like that perfect price point to move off him to somebody like Richarlison. If Kane eventually leaves and Richarlison is playing up top, whether we want to move to an Eze because he started the season well and then their fixtures are nice, whether we want to move to somebody else, and there's so many players in that bracket, and Matoma's that perfect 3 game weeks in, you can move off him because the fixtures drop. And Mbumo, I think if you're going in with both, which I most probably am, it's going to be Mbumo that you want to keep because the fixtures are nice for longer, aren't they? So it's interesting in which way you go with it, but I don't think I'd be wanting to bench Matoma or just play him in any fixture because I feel like you can attack those fixtures a bit more with that price point.
Do you
Yeah, I
then
think-
start thinking about price changes? Because if a lot of people are going to have this idea, and obviously plans don't always come to fruition, to sell Matoma after game week 3, does
Yeah.
it then hit that game week and it becomes a race to the bottom? Otherwise, you're selling for 6.2, for example.
Yeah.
So I think, if I remember, obviously they update this, they tweak it. But if I remember, the way price changes generally work is to go up in price, there is a numerical threshold. So say like you need to gain 100,000 new owners to go up 0.1. To go down in price, however, I think it's a percentage of your ownership. Because if it was 100,000, like a 2% owned player could never go down or something like that. It also may be the other way around, so go check that. But the idea is that like they don't want to, if someone starts at like 85%, they don't want just 100,000. Every time someone sells Haaland, 100,000 people, he could drop like 4 million compared to like a player who's 8.5 million and only owned by 10% of people. So I think to go up, it's like a numerical threshold. To go down, it's a percentage threshold, so that the two things kind of stay a bit relative to one another. And then also more than one price change in a week requires a higher threshold. So it might be like 100,000 for the first move and another 200,000 for the second move, something like that.
Just if
Nice.
everyone had that idea, or are you promising that people won't lose value on him?
No. So I think it's it's definitely still possible. But I think the idea that, say, for example, if Haaland, at 85%, just for some reason was no longer a good pick, if he dropped to 65%, you wouldn't see, a 20% ownership loss. You wouldn't see like an absolute decimation of value, because obviously if a player was like 20% dropped by 20%, they'd go to 0% and their value doesn't go to 0. So they try and keep it a bit sort of rubber banded. But yes, of course, a highly owned player is susceptible. But I guess that's balanced out by the fact that a highly owned player, if they do well, can also hurt you a lot.
Nice. Right, moving on to Arsenal. We're going to make this section a little bit quicker because we want to get onto the drafts and then do our other segments at the end as well. So we've got a table here showing some of the non-penalty XGIs for players in the league and XGIs for players in the league. And you'll see that there are 5 Arsenal players on this table, Seb.
Sure. And one called
Ødegaard.
I don't know who that is. Yeah, I've missed the D there. Sorry. So yeah, this is all the other players on this list are interesting to look at, but they're mostly there to serve a comparison to the Arsenal players. Honestly, Arsenal are quite a bit lower than I expected there, but maybe they've shared it around. Also, maybe I've got lots of forwards here, so of course they're going to come out better than midfielders generally. The idea here, though, is to look at Saka. So Saka's XGI is actually quite towards the bottom of this list, and his non-pen XGI is, I think, the worst on the list. Now, the caveat, of course, with all of this, I tried to keep it simple, is minutes. Saka gets an absolute ton of them. They don't have another right winger. He's nailed. Unlike a Martinelli, even if you think he's nailed, Trossard exists. Don't lie to yourself. There is an X-Min's risk there. Even if you back Martinelli to be the one that starts most of the time, you need to adjust for that. So minutes are important. This is obviously per 90. So, times these by the number of matches, you'll get the real numbers. However, if he were to lose penalties, which is the main thing I was looking at, because his penalty record is fine.
Yeah.
It's not spectacular. And they do have options. For example, Jorginho, he may not play all the time, of course, but I don't think he's as nailed on penalties as, say, like a Harry Kane is, or even a Salah, even though McAllister's now come in. So if we did think he was losing penalties, I think you need to become very concerned, because 0.42, even with guaranteed minutes, is dangerous compared to your other Arsenal options. Trossard's right there and a bit better. Ødegaard, Martinelli probably start looking better. Maybe Ødegaard. So I spelled it wrong. Can't even say it. Martin. is maybe the pick with the minutes if Saka did drop off. But, for now, Saka probably does have penalties, and he needs those, I think, to be competitive, at least based on the numbers from last season. And then just to visualize that, Andy, I've put that into a little graph for you as well.
You have indeed.
So you can kind of see, obviously, that total is, their combined XGI and non-pen XGI. So the numbers look weird, but the reason I've done that is so you can see, the breakdown of each one. So ignore the axis on the side. And you can see there that Saka, if he were to lose them, so the blue is the worst there, and by quite some margin. And even with penalties, he really needs them to keep up. So I think you're relying on the minutes, which is a big thing. Availability is one of the best kinds of ability. But those are the things to keep an eye on with Saka, which I think is the question we wanted to answer here. So Trent for Liverpool and Kunku for Chelsea. Saka for Arsenal. Is it Saka? Is it Martinelli? Is it somewhere else? He's in everyone's team. He's in my team. But something to keep an eye on.
I mean, Rich, you have been one of the biggest Saka fanboys since he came. I mean, I remember you having Saka when he was 4.5 million and nobody knew who he was.
I didn't know who he was.
No, exactly. Like I remember that. You and Korf used to go on about him all the time because you thought about picking him. But, I mean, he is so far and above in terms of ownership compared to Martinelli and Odegaard and Havertz, who obviously is in here now as well. Is he so far and away the best pick of the four of them? And is, if at any point he loses those penalties, it seems like that could be a massive deal for him.
I still think so. I mean, Seb covered partly why, and that's obviously minutes. Obviously, the argument is Odegaard's going to get just as good minutes as Saka, but then I think we know what Saka's role is going to be, or I think we know what his role is going to be. So for me, I think even if he lost penalties, I'd be happy keeping Saka.
Yeah,
there's definitely probably some bias there, but it is the minutes. It's the minutes that give him value. And the fact that he's so young. I mean, I know they've got a lot of young players in the team. I mean, Martinelli's young as well, but you just think he's going to just keep on improving. That England game where he scored a hat-trick, again, it was against Minnows, but he was absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So I would factor in some form of that he's young and he's going to only get better.
Yeah.
That combined with the minutes. And, I mean, it's weird because there was a penalty in a friendly, obviously, that he missed. It's very rare there's even penalties in friendlies.
Yeah.
I'd hope that's not going to get them removed from him. I mean, I'm going to make an assumption of no. It's not exactly a high risk. It's not cost the team anything.
Yeah. And I love looking at those three, like Martinelli, Odegaard, Saka. I love looking at the three and thinking the weaknesses of the other two is what makes Saka so good as an FPL asset. So Martinelli, it's minutes. Well, Saka's biggest strength is minutes. Odegaard, it's that he's not on penalties and maybe doesn't get into those shooting positions. Saka's on penalties and gets into those shooting positions. So every way I look at it, it's like, well, Saka just appears to be the better option. But Odegaard had an incredible season last year, Seb. Like, he genuinely had a season that everybody kept saying all year, he's not going to keep this up, and he did keep it up. Is this going to be one of those things where a lot of people that maybe log on to FPL for 5 minutes before deadline go, Odegaard had a great season, put him straight in, and he just carries on doing it? Or are you putting your analytics head on and going, what he did last season makes no difference to what he's going to do this season? It's not going to carry on?
I mean, I think analytics head quite likes Odegaard because minutes, no penalties. But, well, you mentioned he's not going to get into shooting positions. If I remember, he had the highest non-penalty goal tally of any midfielder, and he really is a midfielder. He's not a midfielder like Salah is. Is it ever in the Premier League? It definitely was last season. I think it was like he beat Gerrard, he beat Lampard, who had penalties, without penalties. So, non-penalty goals, which is massively impressive. And then if you go, okay, but was that just a couple of ridiculous, either skillful or lucky finishes from range? I think his non-pen XG was up there as well. I mean, we can see from these numbers here, right? He is competing. And again, to reiterate, ignore the y-axis there. It's just for illustration, but I think it gives a nice proportional thing. It shows you the separation. So I think Odegaard could be a very tasty pick. The one last thing on Saka is, of course, when we're looking at these numbers, they are backwards looking and they are static. I guess if you think Saka has hit his ceiling and Arsenal have hit their ceiling, therefore I can project these numbers forward forever, and if he loses penalties, he's dead to me. I think Saka has the most potential to keep improving. So if you think Saka steps up this season, you could actually look at this chart in a really positive way. You could go, oh, well, look, he's not even at his best yet. He's young. He's played all these minutes, and he's already competing with all these established players like Bruno and Kane, who, by the way, comes out really badly from this for his price. If Saka were to step up just even a little bit, is he then suddenly your KDB, your Salah, in terms of where he would be in this graphic. So that is the other side of it.
Yeah, and I suppose I love the fact that we're not even looking at prices here. We're just looking at output. And obviously, Saka and Odegaard are the same price, and Martinelli's 0.5 less. I personally think there would have been an argument for making Saka 9, and then really making that kind of that argument of, do I go Martinelli for 1 million cheaper than Saka, or Odegaard, who had an incredible season, is 0.5 less but not on pens, or do I go with Saka, who's on pens and has that potential to go a bit higher? I think making him 9 would have been really interesting this season, but I think at 8.5, that's maybe why we're seeing Saka in pretty much everybody's. Right, shall we have a look at some drafts? Oh, come on then. My window's right here. I've got a draft right here. Whee. Right. Sorry. Dad joke already. So this is actually my team. So this is my 3-5-2 at the moment. This is the one that I sent into the group. Rich went, oh God, that's pretty much my team. And Seb went, oh God, that's pretty much my team. So this is the 3-5-2 hive mind without knowing we were hive minding it. Onana in goal, Stones, Estupinan, Gabriel at the back, Mitoma, Mbumo, Saka, Rashford, Bruno Fernandes in the middle, Haaland captain and Jesus up top, with Areola, Chilwell, Baldock and Archer on the bench. Now, a lot of this for me hasn't changed from the first time I did my draft. So Bruno, Rashford, Saka and Mbumo, Gabriel, all in my team. Haaland been in my team the whole time. The only ones that have changed, I started with Watkins and then went to Jesus. I think Jesus is just, with those first 3 fixtures and with his price point, I think it's perfect to start with. And Mbumo and Mitoma, I'm going to start with, I think, unless Kane definitely leaves and I can go to Richarlison, because this has got 0.5 in the bank as well. I think I'm going to start with those two. I think it's really hard not to. Chilwell on the bench, using FPL team. It was lovely looking at Chilwell rotation after game week 2. Just how many times I'd use them. And Gabriel and Estupinan I can bench if I want to. I don't see an awful lot wrong with this team. I think this team is very, very template, but not because I was looking at it and thinking, I want a template team. I want to stay in the peloton. It just kind of picks itself. The best players from the best teams have the best fixtures to start with, and they're reasonably priced, so it's really hard not to go with them. Bruno Fernandes is 8.5. I don't think I'd have him if he wasn't 8.5. You know, there's a lot of players like that. Saka's 8.5. It's really hard to not go with these players. So, Rich, I know, like I said, when I set it through, you went, oh God, it's basically my team. So much of it picks itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's literally a couple of differences. I've got Foden instead of Mbremo, and instead of Banana, I've got Pickford. I've done the same as you. I've got Chilwell first sub, which I really like. That could be James, although I think he was only on the bench in the friendly the other day. Instead of Baldock, I've got Bayer, so that's quite exciting. No, and then I've got a different 4.5 striker as well, thanks to Bricky.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And
I can't even remember his name. Woodman? Is it Woodman?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, gone for him.
Yeah. See, it's really tough, isn't it? Because a lot of people, you put them on the screen and everybody goes, yeah, that's pretty much my team. Yeah. It's interesting that 3-4-3 has started coming in now. Like, people are starting to look at changing one of their midfielders and putting someone like a Darwin or Nkunku up top. I mean, Seb, this template debate is going on an awful lot at the moment. I'm one of these people that if people say to me, oh, that's template, I'm not going to change my thinking just because people think it's template. I made this team thinking they were going to get me the most points in the first couple of weeks, regardless of what their ownership was. Surely that's all we should be worried about to start with.
Yeah, I mean, we started with that apparently very popular peloton analogy. I wouldn't worry about that. I think, especially early on, there's probably, if anything, there's an argument for leaning towards the template rather than away from it.
Yeah.
Because the most damage I guess you can do is that start. You're not going to get it psychologically. It's very interesting. We almost feel like in game week 2, I can just build a new team. Nah, one transfer a week starts game week 1 to game week 2, so you're kind of stuck with what you've got. So I think it makes sense to go with something, as long as it's sensible, to go with something popular. It's popular for a reason. People aren't just going with template because it was spoken about on Scoutcast or on YouTube somewhere. It's come from somewhere. I guess the only thing you can do then is maybe try and set up with this, but with a little bit of spice thrown in. So I know some people have Foden, for example, which seems a reasonable shout. Yeah.
I will say now as well, those people telling you oh, this is template, you should change it. As soon as you change it and the template smashes it, they will be laughing so hard at you as well.
And you know what's interesting as well? I think with pricing, that's been a discussion the last couple of years. It seems kinder, if that's the right word. A lot of players are very, very affordable. And I think initially your Haaland, your Salah, your maybe Kane and Trent were quite highly priced and competitively priced if it weren't for everyone else being so cheap. And you'd think that might give us more options because so many midfielders are accessible, and yet we all have the same midfield. And I think that shows that it's not about pricing players high or pricing players low. It's about pricing them correctly relative to one another. So you mentioned Saka, Odegaard, Martinelli there. If you make Saka 9, Odegaard's 8.5, Martinelli's 8 or anything, there is a decision to be made. Whereas at the moment, we're all just going, yeah, Saka, because even if Saka's a bad option, I can move to one of the other two, but it's an easy decision. So even if he's kindly priced, he isn't well priced, I think, if that's fair to say, in terms of providing decisions and diversification, because we aren't seeing that.
And I will say now as well, there will be a lot of FPL managers out there that have only started playing in the last 2, 3, 4 years. We haven't had a normal season for 4 years now. Like, we have had different things happening. We've had double game weeks. We've had more wild cards. We've had more chances to reset and go back to the template each time. That won't be happening now. Like Seb's just said, it's going to be one transfer a week. And all those kind of swings and differences will be happening because people make one poor decision, they make two poor decisions, whatever it is, and all of a sudden those teams are very, very different. Whereas before, you had extra wildcards you could use, you had more of those double game weeks, so those templates were so strong. Whereas going into this season, I'm just hoping it's a normal season and it's going to be very, very different. And one thing I know, Rich, I wanted to talk to you about really quickly before we go on to the 3-4-3 is a lot of people, when I said, right, I'm going to downgrade Trent, where can I use the money? So many people said, upgrade all your bench players. Because we've gone through seasons where games are postponed, where, you could be getting 3 of your bench players off the bench. But before, back in 2019, whenever it was, you would maybe have one good bench player and the rest were we'd had Lundstrom, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, all these 4 million players, because you don't want your bench players to be good, do you?
And to be honest, you said there's not been a normal season for a while, but something huge that we've kind of just got used to is obviously we've got this blank game week in game week 2. Yeah. Obviously, it's only Luton. No offense to Luton, Luton Burnley, but I think it has huge impact.
Yeah.
Because I think you've got Bulldog, for example, and the only reason you've probably got Bulldog is because Luton and Burnley blank.
Yeah.
It's the whole reason that having a strong first sub makes sense. Because you've also got City in the Super Cup, so with 2 City players, you could easily have one or both of them, benched in game week 2, or just something happens to them in that final. So I think it's not completely a normal season, and I think it's eliminated players like Brownhill, Colton Morris. We can't look at those, and I think they would have been not template breakers, but I think they would have been a lot more popular.
Yeah,
Morris. We are kind of being funneled down because of that blank, and it seems like such a silly blank to cause that, but that's where we've got the 4.0 defenders.
No, it's interesting. I mean, we're just having a look at the 3-4-3 now as well. So the 3-4-3, this is, like I said, this is starting to seep into a lot of teams that I'm seeing as well. This has got Johnson in goal. It does have Trent. It's got Chilwell starting, and it's got Gabriel. Saka, Bruno Fernandes, Foden and Matoma in the middle. Then with Haaland, Jesus and Nkunku up front. Areola, Baldock, Anderson, Elliot Anderson for Newcastle, and Bayer on the bench there. Now, one thing I do want people to do as well when they're looking at this, don't just think you like it because it's different. That a lot of people are doing that. They're seeing the very, very similar drafts everywhere, and then they see something different and go, oh, I like this more. But they're only doing it really because it's different. But this does look okay. Obviously, they've got 2 Chelsea to start with, which is interesting. They've got Trent there, but it is a lot easier to move down from Trent than it is to move up to Trent. Seb, we haven't heard from you for a little bit now. Talk us through the 3-4-3. What do you think? Do you like it?
Yeah, we can't be having that, can we? So I put this one together. Tried to throw a few little differences in there as well. So, for example, you don't have to have Trent in a 3-4-3, but I thought might as well try and show a Trent team as well. I didn't bother with a Salah team, although those are valid too. But you can't have Trent or maybe even Haaland if you do that. For me, the strength then here is obviously getting your third forward. There's a lot of conversation about there's so many good midfielders. I need 5 midfielders so that I can get to any of them. But I think there's validity in that. But I think the real question is not there are 15 good midfielders, therefore I must have 5, and there are only 6 good forwards, therefore I can have 2. but I think it's which one's better, the third forward or the fifth midfielder or fourth midfielder. It doesn't matter beyond that because you can't pick them. And if you want to jump to them, you can swap others or you can change your structure. Yeah, it's one more transfer. So the advantage I think this brings is if you do think someone like Nkunku is going to have a massive season, or Darwin, if Darwin you think is nailed. If we think Darwin is nailed, I'm there. I'm so there. That is when I go 3-4-3. And I think that's when you when you get an advantage over the midfield. You look at the type of players you can have as well, right? Our fourth midfielders are Mbumu and Mitoma, who are good. But if I get to have a Liverpool or a Chelsea forward, it's a better team. I think it would potentially a better team, at least traditionally. So I think I maybe have access to higher points, but maybe also a lower floor. So that's the real reason for me. And the other player I'd love to call out here is Johnston. I think he's being overlooked. We're all very excited about Anana, who I think is I think he's good. I think I'll probably pick him, but I think he's not going to be as good as people think. And Johnston, Crystal Palace had the fourth best XG.
You what?
Man, De Gea got a huge points total last year. Got 17 clean sheets, and Man United were like upper mid-table for XG against.
Sorry.
Like
we've just signed.
There's a lot for Anana to do there, man. He's well priced, and I think I'll pick him.
No,
but
speaking about regens, we've just signed Buffon's regen.
Fair enough, buddy. Buffon famously good with his feet, right? Yeah,
and his hair.
But yeah, so Johnston, we like value in our goalkeepers. The team with the fourth best XGA, expected goals against, last season, so better than Man United, better than top of my head, it might have been better than Arsenal actually. I think it was City, Newcastle, or Arsenal, Palace, I think was the order. So yeah, 4.5 for that. If you think it's going to be similar this season, and he may well get saves because a poorer team. So not that the numbers say that, but I think maybe a nice balance there. So if I needed to save some money in goal, I'd go there, I think.
Yeah, lovely. Right, shall we go on to our newest segment? So this is going to be a weekly segment. This week it's going to be slightly different because we're going to be talking about season totals, but this is going to be a new weekly segment where we're going to be talking about the next 3 weeks of points. So this is our over and under section. So we're going to be talking about different players, popular players that are going to be talking about a lot in the community, and we are going to be saying, right, Seb and Rich, here's a player for you. I'm going to give you a point total that I think they're going to get over the season. Do you think they're going to get over this total or under this total? Does that make sense, boys? I hope it does, because I've explained it to you both already. I'm explaining it to everybody else. Yeah. Lovely stuff. So let's have a look then at who we are going to be talking about first. So the first one is going to be Trent. So Trent Alexander-Arnold. I have put here that I think he's going to get 170 points this year. Last year, he got 156. Seb, if I start with you, are you going to go with over or under 170 points for this season?
Is that your guess, or is this just a total for us to go over and under? Because you said you think he's going to get 170. So is that your guess as well?
This is as for the good of the game. I am saying okay. I'm thinking he's going to get 170.
I think you've done this really well, by the way. If you've seen me looking left, that's because I've been desperately trying to do this. So over. He's going to get over 170.
Over 170. Lovely. Yep. What about you, Rich?
I've gone over as well. I just want to say, Andy, you've done these lines so perfectly. You could maybe be a future bookmaker or something.
Oh, no. So you both think over. Is that because you think his last year total of 156 was low for him because of the clean sheets? Or do you feel like Liverpool are going to get more clean sheets this year? Why over? I
originally put under, and I started the show by saying midfield or inverting, that's worse for FPL. If I've just said he's getting over 170 points, why aren't I picking him? Maybe the price. I'll tell you why I changed it. I did say under and I've gone over. Looking at his past totals, do I still think he can get 8, 10 assists from midfield? He's going to get the clean sheets, obviously, no matter what. So do I think that we'll get enough? Do I think he gets the assist? Do I think when he does that, he gets the bonus? He's got 200 and he's got 185 odd in the past. I think he can scrape 170, despite me not thinking he's attractive as he's been in the past.
Nice. Okay. Right. Next one then is Mo Salah. So Mo Salah last year got 239 points. Bad season for him, apparently. 239 points. I think this season he's going to get 260 points. So Rich, do you think you're going to go with under or over for Salah with 260? Remembering Salah has got over 300 before.
I think he's going to do very well. I think he's only got over 300 once. I've got under.
You've got under 260.
I think you've got it pretty spot on. I think it's harder for him to go over than under. And under could still be a very good season.
What about you, Seb?
I've got under too, man. He's only gone over 260 twice, 265 and 303. He got 259. He got 259 in the past, which is basically, close enough. But he's doing that with 22 goals, 12 assists, 32 goals, 12 assists. Last year he got 19 goals, 13 assists, some bonus. He's not great at bonus, we know that. 239. I think under, and yet still very good. Last year was a good season for him.
I like it. Right, Haaland is up next. So Haaland got 272 points last year. I'm predicting him to pretty much do the same and get 270. Are we going under or over, Seb?
Yeah, you'd say about the same, wouldn't you? I've gone over, assuming he doesn't get injured. He had a little drop off, didn't he? Didn't score. Was it like 1 in 5 or something?
Yeah.
If that doesn't happen next year, which there's every chance it doesn't, I think he just smashes it again.
Yeah, Rich.
I've gone under, and my reasoning was I think he could miss some time at some point. I'm not saying he's going to get injured. Actually, that's pretty much what I'm saying.
that's a good shout, actually, man.
It is.
I will stick with over, but actually, yeah, he got a huge amount of minutes last year, which we didn't expect.
Lots of people in the chat are saying over. Lots of people think he's going to get towards 300 this year. Could do. Never know. Man City have changed a lot, though. Right. Watkins up next. Ollie Watkins. Obviously, a lot of people aren't starting with him, but whether we should be or not, we haven't discussed it. Maybe that's something for next week. Last year, he got 175 points. I'm expecting him to get 165 this year. Rich, are you going to go over or under?
I've gone over. I think he'll have the full season. I don't even think penalties matters that much. Yeah, I think he's going to go over.
Yeah. Seb?
Under. Overperformed XG.
Oh, I love this. Yeah, I think he's going to go over, actually. I think Villa are my dark horse team this year. I think they're going to do really well. Saka next. Saka managed 202 points last year, which is not bad. I'm expecting him to improve this year and get 220. So, Seb, are you going to go under or over 220 points? Under. Rich?
Easiest over ever.
Oh!
Over 220.
Love it. Is that because of your love for Saka, or?
It's not love. It's just an honest prediction. I said I think he's going to improve. I can see one day he'll be like a 11, 12 million midfielder.
Oh, love it.
Not this season, obviously.
No.
That'd be some price rise.
Interesting one, this one. Foden's next. Foden only managed 142 points last year. I'm predicting him to play a little bit more, not a lot, a little bit more, and get 150 points. So, Rich, are you going to go over or under 150 points for Foden?
Foden. I think over. I think he's going to get more minutes.
Yeah? This will be the season, will it?
Yes, this will finally be. I've actually moved house. I've 3 times since I first owned him.
Love that. Yeah. Seb?
I think over, but it's tough because it really relies on those minutes, right? He's never got over, or if he has, it's only just been marginal.
Yeah.
So at what point do we just accept that he's actually just a rotationally impact player? Hopefully not for his development as much as anything. So over.
Nice. Next one then. Onana is next. Obviously, we don't have points for him for last year, but we do have David De Gea's 161 points from last season. I'm predicting Onana to only get 150. So, Seb, would you like to go over or under on Onana's 150 points this year?
Under. Yeah, Man United's defense isn't any better. And De Gea, in terms of expected points versus points, had a phenomenal season. I don't think Onana is going to earn enough bonus to make up for the fact that Man United's defense isn't better.
You disgust me. Isn't any better? How many clean sheets did we get last year?
Yeah, 17, which was a massive overperformance on your numbers.
Rich?
See, this is what I like, Seb. I've got under as well, and I had this thing. I said that Man United were lucky to get as many clean sheets as they were, just like Seb has, and I got many arguments back saying, "Oh, we'd look at just the home stats." Again, nowhere near the top. Man City were miles clear. Then it was like, oh, but in this many games they kept under 1 XG, but there was several where it's like 0.99 XG. So yeah, I'm going under. I mean, maybe he'll make more saves than De Gea, but I doubt it. The bonus potential looks good, but you have to keep the clean sheet to get the bonus. And your attack looks potentially good as well, which could steal, bonus away from.
And saves, right? If you actually do think your defense is going to get better, is that not fewer saves for him to make?
Yeah, then you've just got Edison.
Buffon Jr.
Yeah, so
Buffon
if your
Jr.
defense is actually
Good initials there
elite,
as well.
you've got
Anyway.
Edison. 0.5 saving on Edison.
Brilliant. Nkunku is up next. Obviously, we don't have his points from last year, but I've gone with Callum Wilson, who got 157 points. So do we think Nkunku is going to get more or less than 160 points?
I'm really starting to wish I'd paid more attention to this and try to crunch some numbers.
Yeah. Go on in, Seb. What do you think? 160 for Nkunku.
A purely vibey over by probably quite a lot.
Yeah. Rich?
I've gone under. But obviously, a lot of because it's over the season, there's a lot of things that can happen. So I feel like actually going under is much safer bet because
there's probably
one injury and I've won.
probably some game theory here where you just say under with all of them.
Yeah.
Because if they're what Andy expects, all you need is one injury and you've probably won one by a landslide.
It's very true.
Yeah.
I will say, though,
I wish I'd paid more attention to this.
Nkunku is the one that I feel like, and we've mentioned it already, he's the one player I'm thinking could make a mockery of his price.
I think 160 is low. I'm very happy to go over.
Yeah. Rashford next got 205 points last season. I'm predicting him to get slightly less at 200. Rich, do you think he's going to be under or over 200 points this year?
I've gone for under on this, but it felt close. I don't think anything would shock me with him. As in, I don't think I'd be shocked if he missed large chunks of the season, and I wouldn't be shocked, if he scored 20 goals.
I mean, he must have only had about 40 points before Christmas. He seemed
That's
to do
the
it all
thing.
after,
Actually, if
didn't
you
he?
extrapolate that.
Yeah.
But
What
yeah,
about
I've
you,
gone
Seb?
under.
Oh, sorry.
But again, it's mainly injury concerns.
Yeah. What about you, Seb?
Under, but I don't think that means it's interesting, isn't it? Because the way we're framing this is like if you say under, you think bad. It's like you could get 180 points, which is great, probably even for his price.
Yeah.
I think just under. Last year was his best season, both on the pitch and FPL terms. I think give or take that's his peak, so I will edge under.
Yeah. Son is next. He only got 152 points last year. Considering how many points he got the year before, only got 152. So I'm going to stick around there. Do we think he gets above or below 150 points? So basically, I'm asking you, is Son going to return next season? Rich, what do you think?
Actually, to be fair, I said that Saka was easy. This was easy over for me.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You think he'll be back? Seb?
Seb doesn't find it so easy.
So
All Leeds have got relegated again. One of the two. And those two...
I will stick with what I've written on my piece of paper. I think Rich is right. Son has only got under 150 once after his first season, right? So basically, he's a nailed on for 150 plus. But he's also never played without Kane, and I think all his big totals have come in that Kane-Son tandem front two thing. I don't think it works from this season. I'm going under, and I think I'm wrong, and I think I'm stupid. But I wrote under, so I'll go under.
I think I'm wrong, and I think I'm stupid.
Because he used to be... I always used to think of Son as like this huge creator. As in, I felt like he used to create a lot before he had that massive, golden boot season. So...
I've got two more. I've got two more. I just want to get through so we can do a Q&A as well. Because we're already over an hour and a half.
It's over, isn't it? It's so much over.
I know.
I've got work soon. So
over 600 people in the chat, by the way. Thank you so much. Make sure you're liking the stream for us. Jesus, he only managed 125 points last season. I'm expecting him to hopefully be a little bit healthier this year and get 160 points. Seb, what do you think? 160 over or under?
See, again, this is another one I wish I'd done more prep. So 125 is an easy over because he probably doesn't miss a bunch of the season injured. But you've accounted for that with 160. So I wrote over and I'll stick with it because I think if he's there 9 all season, he really pushes that up. But maybe I've been stupid again.
Yeah. Rich?
What I found interesting about that is you said he got 120 points. Loads of that was in one game. I've gone over as well.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I'm expecting big things.
Last one, which I think is going to be a big one as well. Darwin Núñez. He only managed 100 points last year. I have put him at, I think, a rather generous 150 points this year. Rich, over or under 150 points for Darwin Núñez?
I've been reading a lot of stuff about him recently from Liverpool fans, and it looks like that number 9 positions might be his to lose. So I think it's easy over.
Seb is like, no, I don't want to
I'm
get
gonna
him.
pick him. I'm gonna pick him.
I know we already know
And I'm
Seb's
gonna be
going to.
2
He just
million.
doesn't know yet.
Yeah, exactly. Seb, you're going over then, aren't you?
Yeah. Can I have a double it option? Like in all
300
seriousness, yeah,
points,
over.
over.
Like if he
Triple
if he
captain.
gets that position, he can underperform his XG for all he cares. He did last year, and his points per match or whatever were still decent. If he plays, yeah, over comfy. You look at, I mean, this was a bit of my logic for Jesus as well. You look at like what someone like Kane, Aguero, whatever I've got in the past. I'm not saying he's going to go get Kane points, but Kane very clearly gets past 150 very, very easily. So Darwin, easy, 160, 170, 180, fine.
Yeah, not 300 then. Can't wait
I'd
for
love it so
Bruno
much.
to outscore.
You know what will happen? It'll be like Bamford again or something, where like he will get 300 points, and for whatever reason, I'll be like, no, I must resist this temptation. It's an emotional epic, and everyone gets all their points.
Yeah,
and
me and Rich will have him.
even though I win, I lose.
Yeah.
We're captain in game week 2 against Bournemouth.
If you liked the over and under section, let us know. Like I said, I want to try and make that a bit of a weekly segment that we're going to do at the end of each stream. So let us know if you like it. Now, before we move on to the Q&A, which will be fairly shorter than I thought it was going to be, I just need to tell you about the community team. We are going to do the community team next season. The big thing, though, is that Seb and Rich took so much time doing the community team last year that it actually was to the detriment of their own team at times. So what we have done this year, I have asked somebody who has been a avid Scoutcast listener for years in Rank Chaser, FPL Rank Chaser. So if he's in the chat, hello, Rank Chaser. He is going to take on the community team. He is going to make a group chat for any Scoutcast member watchers that love Scoutcast and watch it every week. And you are going to be doing polls and setting up the team and basically going against me, Seb, and Rich. And if any of us lose to you, there will be a forfeit. We will know what the forfeits are by next week, but we will see whether basically you can beat us. So whether the Scoutcast viewers' hive mind can beat us next season. It did really well last year, but obviously that was us also kind of scaffolding it in. We want to see whether just you can beat us. Rank Chaser is in the chat. Hello, mate. We're going to set up the thing, the group chat for everybody tomorrow. So be prepared. If you fancy it, we'll put out a bit of a thing tomorrow, and you can make sure you like it and you can be involved in the group chat. Rank Chaser is, he's brilliant. He knows his stuff with FPL. He has good finishes as well, so he knows what he's talking about. So he's going to take it on for us this year. If it wins FPL, you can all host this next year. Right, let's go for a bit of a Q&A then. So chuck your questions into the chat, and we'll answer as many as we can as quickly as we can. Like I said, I think we peaked at about 750 people in the chat today, which is lovely for 2 weeks before the season starts. I'm hoping we get to about 1,000 people by next Monday, really, isn't it? Because that'll be our first stream before the season starts. So, chuck us in your questions, anything you like. Try and make it as specific as possible, and we'll try and answer them as quickly as possible. Nothing's coming in at the moment, lads. This is a bit embarrassing, isn't it? Oh, here we go. Thomas Nilsson says, could Cancelo be out of the position comeback kid as a replacement for Mahrez? Rich, what do you think?
I kind of hope not. Because I was I think then we'd all get him if that was the case. And Foden, what happens there? Like, I know Foden can play different positions. I honestly don't know. I think that's one for Luke Disable, isn't it? Like, if it happens, everyone will go there.
Yeah.
I've not seen anything to suggest that.
No, last thing I heard was that with Dembele going to PSG, Barcelona were basically Cancelo's like their top target.
Okay.
So,
because Dembele, what?
Because then they've got the funds. Yeah. And they need
I thought you meant as a replacement. I was like, do they know who those players are?
So then they're going to push on to try and get him. Yeah,
that makes more sense. Sorry, yeah.
Lovely. Seb from Tony D says Salah or Trent. Darwin.
Darwin.
Yeah.
Salah.
Salah.
I reckon when review comes out, I reckon Salah's in it, and I bet everyone rips up their teams.
Yeah. Josh says, would you consider Bowen as a budget option, Rich?
No.
No.
Are we still doing short answers? Genuinely,
I
hadn't really considered him. He's not on penalties anymore, so
that hurts.
For that reason, no.
Yeah. Seb, Greg asks, would you double up on any defences?
Chelsea, if James and Chilwell are both good. City, no, probably just because minutes and stuff. I guess there's always the Man United option if you go for the goalkeeper. Sure, maybe not worth it with that, but you could. What else? Arsenal,
Newcastle,
maybe Newcastle.
Botman and Trippier.
Numbers are very good. Actually, yeah, Botman and if Trippier he feels overpriced, doesn't he? But because Botman's an easy in, yeah. And then there's probably the classic, like you do it accidentally with a cheap team, if you know what I mean. Like, your Burnley or something, Crystal Palace.
Nice. Burnley. Yeah, I'd double up on Burnley.
Well, everyone's got, load of people got a 4.0, right? So all it takes is the goalkeeper to be value and you've doubled up.
Yeah, I like it. Animations says, is Colwell worth it for 4.5 million, Rich?
I have considered it. The only downside I could see to it, because obviously I think it would be kind of like your fourth, fifth defender, probably fourth, is you'll then be blocking a Chelsea spot when you go into those really, really good fixtures.
Yeah.
So I probably wouldn't. I mean, maybe if you're happy going without Chilwell or James, you can make it work. And there's loads of good 4.5s.
Yeah. He reminds me an awful lot of Joe Gomez all those years ago for Liverpool, when people were like, oh, he's 4.5 million, why don't we get Joe Gomez? And then they didn't get Robertson, Trent, Mane, Salah. Like, people regretted going for him when they did, because the upside just isn't there, is it? But you said, there's so many other 4.5s you can pick.
I think that's the thing. I think in seasons gone, a 4.5 defender playing for Chelsea would be a no-brainer, but it doesn't really stand out this year.
Yeah. Oliver Bett says, don't recall you mentioning Harvey Barnes. Do you think he's a good choice when the fixtures turn, Seb?
So I don't really rate Harvey Barnes, and yet to be fair, if you look at the numbers,
I was going to say numbers are good,
decent enough, yeah. But I feel like, he always used to do well against Leeds, so maybe I just don't like him. But
I captained him once against you.
Oh, fair play.
Yeah.
His I don't think his numbers are good enough to make up for whatever it is that. I just think he's a little bit short. Yeah, so no, I'm not really that interested.
Bit mean.
What a put down you just did to Seb, that you captained Harvey Barnes against his team.
I did, yeah, he scored.
That's like the ultimate insult.
I think Leicester. I think they lost. I think Leeds beat Leicester, but Harvey Barnes scored.
In the season we got promoted, one of the few things I did right that year was I sold Salah to Son, captain Son, when Son played us. Because it was just, the whole season, it was just like, yeah, Leeds are great, but if there's like one individually really good player who can carry ball, they destroy Bielsa's man marking. And that was Son. So, yeah.
There you go. Alan Abdullah says, what position will Foden play in the absence of Gundo and Mahrez? Rich?
Yesterday, didn't he play in the Gundo role for a bit? But he only played half the game.
I thought he played right, but then kept coming inside. Because Bernardo played in the middle.
Oh, I thought Bernardo played on the right. Okay.
Oh, if it was the other way around, that's my mistake. Fair. I know they both played, and Peppers talked up Bernardo as in like wanting to keep him, giving him a bit more money, because with Gundo gone, he'll play a more central role, as in, importance, not literal.
Yeah.
So I thought it was Bernardo in like that middle role and Foden right, but I might be wrong.
Yeah. The write-up I read said he played in Gundo role.
Oh, fine.
But I didn't watch it, and it can be quite fluid with Pep as well. So I could be very wrong. And I've seen people have very strong opinions on where they want him to play.
Yeah.
For me, I just want him to get the minutes if he's going to be in my team.
Yeah.
Again, I know it sounds quite blasé. I don't really care where he plays for FPL.
But if he plays,
that's the thing. That's the problem with him. It's just him being on the pitch consistently.
Yeah.
Because we saw the graph earlier, didn't we? How he compares. He had higher, stats than Saka, for example.
But I do wonder, like Seb said, whether this is just who he is in FPL playing for Man City. Is he ever going to get the minutes to get above 150, 160 points in a season? But obviously that's not how you look at it. You don't look at the season. You look at those bursts that he has, and those players that got on him just before Christmas were absolutely loving life, and the players that got him just after Christmas were not loving life so much. So it's really hard to know when to get him, isn't it?
Those people sound very, very smart and clever and intelligent.
They were.
Yeah. No. I just want to say as well, I feel like Rafinha is like just a nailed on signing for City. I've not paid attention this summer, so maybe he's not, but surely Rafinha comes in, plays right wing, and that's that sorted.
Well, they're looking
at like Foden played
Elise,
both yesterday.
Oh, are they?
Sorry to interrupt there.
Yeah. Foden played both.
He was on the right. And he was playing the Gundo role.
I know Disable came out and said that it's either, but it's looking more likely he'll be the Gundo role, which is interesting. Yeah. Kirill says, a bold prediction. Who scores the most points over the first 5 game weeks? Foden, Darwin or Bruno, Seb?
Darwin.
If people are listening on the pod, Seb just nodded at me quite enthusiastically a few times there.
Like Joey from Friends.
It wasn't it? Yeah.
How you doing?
Right. Someone just mentioned there. I can't see where it's gone now, though. There we go. Nuclear atoms. Are some Man United fans deluded to think Højlund will just kick off immediately? Rich, do not mention Man United fans being deluded, but what do you think about Højlund?
I mean, he's very young. He's not scored many goals. I know from watching international football, he's very highly rated, as in, like, in a lot of fantasy games, people like picking him.
Yeah.
I don't have much of an opinion on him. I mean, I saw. I'm also very careful what I say, Man United, but I saw obviously your record fees of players you bought.
Yeah.
There's not many who've been successful. I do. I mean, every time you sign someone for big money, I think, oh, this is going to be it. Like with Sancho, for example. But I guess you've got a better manager now.
Yeah, and better people making those decisions.
Do you think he's actually going to play regularly to begin with?
Not to start, but he's going to need time, big time.
Yeah, because he's young.
Yeah, because he's young and because he needs to be protected. And I think Ten Hag is one of those managers that will protect him. I don't think he's just going to shove him in there and say, be our striker. But he's got an awful lot of attributes that are great. I think, he's going to be one of those players that I do like him. And I think he's going to suit the way Ten Hag wants to play. He's that player that can bring the ball down and, protect it and bring other players in, which is perfect when you look at our wingers. And the fact that he can occupy those defenders and people like Bruno is going to be, loving life. But he's not going to be that player straight away. He needs time, and I think anybody going with him straight away is more out of either hope or they're a Man United fan that's got excited, if that makes sense. Onana, I could always understand. Like, I could understand people going for him with the fixtures and with how good defensively they were last year, Seb. But I think if you're going for Højlund, I think that's more you're excited than anything else.
I think Onana's a good pick. I just chill out with the point expectations.
Yeah.
I mean, Højlund's been. It's a pretty big overpayment, but Man United tax is real, right? There's no.
Oh yeah.
FPL. It doesn't matter what they paid in real life. I don't think he's an FPL option yet. And in terms of, you've basically chosen to do the anti-Casemiro, right? You've overpaid again, but this time for the opposite reason, which is potential as opposed to current production.
Yeah.
He's currently got 20 90s in a top 5 league, which obviously was Serie A last season.
Yeah.
Was it 9 goals from about 9 XG? So fine, has all the attributes. But it's one of those where, like, you've paid for what he'll become, not what he currently is.
Yeah.
Big fee, and the wages were higher than I expected as well. Mm-hmm. So I think the value proposition is dodgy. But if your other alternative was Kane and you couldn't have made that work, fair enough. If he comes good, you've probably done what I wanted you to do with Casemiro, which was, look to build to the future rather than try and solve now. So I can't have it both ways. I can't criticize both of them.
You can, and people do.
And I will try, but I'll be wrong.
So, lovely stuff. Chat, like I said, I think we peaked at about 750 people there. Thank you so much for listening and so much for watching as well. If this is your first time watching Scoutcast or listening to Scoutcast, I hope you enjoyed it. And please join us every week. We absolutely love doing this. And like I said, we are literally here every week. We're quite reliable. There was only 1 week last year where none of us were available because we were all ill. But we love doing this every week, and we love to see more and more people watching and listening. If you did enjoy it, make sure you like it and make sure you mention it on Twitter as well. We'd love to interact with you on Twitter too. We will start this community team group chat tomorrow, so make sure you're available for that if you want to be involved. Rich, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed yourself tonight.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm glad we don't start any later. Let's put it that way. But it's been good. We've covered a lot, and I feel like we could have covered a lot more. It
was going to be like that tonight, wasn't it? It was always going to be a bit of a longer one, so apologies. But thank you so much for joining us. And Seb, I hope you enjoyed yourself as well, bub.
I really did. Yeah, thanks so much for having us back.
Yeah. And we will see you all next Monday, where we will show you our proper teams. Obviously, they won't be locked in, but at least you'll get to see them as close to deadline as possible. Right, thank you so much, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.